The first warning appeared at 8:07 on a Monday morning, but nobody in the 36th-floor boardroom understood what it meant. By 8:41, investors were panicking. By 9:15, the company's stock was collapsing. And before the morning was over, Victoria Langford's billion-dollar empire had lost nearly $900 million in market value. Yet the most painful part was not the money. It was the realization that the man she had ignored 3 days earlier had tried desperately to save her from it. If you believe kindness, humility, and second chances can change a person's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to Story of Kindness. Because sometimes the person we dismiss today becomes the person we desperately need tomorrow. Victoria Langford had spent 15 years building Langford Dynamics, from a small technology company into one of the most respected investment firms in the country. She was brilliant, disciplined, and fearless. Her employees admired her determination, but many were quietly intimidated by her confidence. Victoria rarely questioned her own judgment because, for years, her judgment had made her successful. On the surface, she had everything: a penthouse apartment overlooking the city, expensive cars, powerful friends, and a company worth billions. But behind the polished glass walls of her office was a woman who had slowly learned to measure people by titles, wealth, and achievements. Michael Carter was almost the opposite. He dressed simply, spoke carefully, and had no impressive title attached to his name. He worked as an independent financial analyst and had recently been hired as a temporary consultant for one of Langford Dynamics' investment divisions. He was a single father raising his 10-year-old daughter, Lily, after losing his wife several years earlier. Michael's life had taught him something Victoria had forgotten. Sometimes survival depended not on being the smartest person in the room, but on being willing to notice what everyone else overlooked. During his first month reviewing the company's investment portfolio, Michael discovered something disturbing. One of Langford Dynamics' largest holdings was tied heavily to a rapidly expanding technology supplier called Novitech Systems. The company's public numbers looked impressive, but Michael noticed unusual changes in its debt structure, shrinking cash reserves, and several transactions between companies that appeared to be connected. He spent 2 sleepless nights checking the figures again and again. The pattern became impossible to ignore. On Friday afternoon, Michael requested a private meeting with Victoria. He entered her office, carrying a thin folder filled with charts and financial records. He explained that Langford Dynamics was dangerously exposed to Novitech and recommended reducing the position immediately. He did not claim the company was definitely going to collapse. He simply warned that the risk was far greater than the board believed. Victoria listened for less than 10 minutes before dismissing the recommendation. To her, Michael sounded overly cautious. The company's executives had already approved the investment. Major analysts were optimistic, and the market had rewarded them for it. Michael tried one final time. He explained that protecting billions of dollars sometimes meant accepting a smaller profit today, rather than risking everything tomorrow. Victoria thanked him coldly and told him that successful investing required courage, not fear. Michael left the office with his folder still in his hands. He knew he had failed to convince her. That evening, he returned home to find Lily asleep at the kitchen table with a school book open beneath her head. The apartment was quiet except for the ticking of an old clock. Michael gently carried his daughter to bed, then sat alone beside the window. He thought about Victoria's decision. He could have been angry. He could have blamed her. Instead, he opened his laptop and began reviewing the data one more time. At 8:07 the following Monday morning, Novitech Systems released a devastating announcement. An internal investigation had uncovered serious accounting irregularities, and several expected contracts were no longer secure. Within minutes, financial news networks began reporting the story. Investors rushed to sell. Novitech's shares plunged. Because Langford Dynamics had invested so heavily in the company, its own stock began falling almost immediately. Victoria was standing in the boardroom when her chief financial officer entered with a pale face. The first loss estimate was hundreds of millions. Then, another screen updated. The number climbed again. Executives stared silently as the market erased years of accumulated value in a matter of hours. By 9:15, Langford Dynamics had lost roughly $900 million in market capitalization. The boardroom erupted into panic. Directors demanded explanations. Investors called non-stop. Employees feared layoffs. News reporters gathered outside the headquarters. Victoria sat frozen in her chair, staring at the financial screen. Then she remembered Michael. She asked where he was. Michael was not celebrating. He was sitting in a small neighborhood cafe, trying to finish breakfast before taking Lily to school. When his phone began filling with messages, he already knew what had happened. His warning had been correct. Victoria could have blamed Michael for not doing more. Instead, something unexpected happened. She called him and asked him to return to the office. When Michael entered the boardroom, the same executives who had ignored him on Friday were now watching him with desperate eyes. Victoria stood slowly. For the first time since he had met her, Michael saw no arrogance in her expression, only exhaustion. She admitted that she had been wrong. Those 4 words changed the atmosphere in the room. Michael did not humiliate her. He did not remind her that he had warned them. He simply opened his folder and explained what could still be saved. The company could not recover the $900 million immediately, but it could prevent an even greater disaster. He identified stronger assets, recommended emergency restructuring, and helped the financial team separate the company's healthy investments from the damaged ones. For 3 days, Michael barely slept. Victoria stayed at the office alongside him. Something changed between them during those long nights. Victoria began listening, not because Michael had suddenly become more important, but because she finally understood that wisdom did not always arrive wearing an expensive suit. On Thursday morning, the board approved Michael's emergency plan. Months later, Langford Dynamics was still recovering. Its reputation had suffered, and thousands of employees had endured an uncertain period. But the company survived. More importantly, Victoria changed. She created an independent risk committee and gave analysts permission to challenge senior leadership without fear. She also offered Michael a permanent position as chief investment strategist. But Michael asked for one condition. The company should create a scholarship fund for employees' children who could not afford university. Victoria agreed immediately. At the scholarship ceremony, Lily stood beside her father while dozens of employees applauded. Victoria watched the little girl smile proudly at Michael, and for a moment, the billionaire CEO forgot about stock prices, board meetings, and lost fortunes. She understood that the greatest investment she had ever made was not in a company. It was in a person she had almost failed to hear, and Michael understood something too. Being ignored had hurt, but choosing kindness afterward had changed everything. He could have allowed Victoria's mistake to destroy her. Instead, he helped her rebuild. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Story of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a reminder that humility can save relationships, and kindness can turn even the worst mistake into a new beginning. Before we end, comment, "I believe in second chances." If you believe that admitting your mistake is not weakness, it is the beginning of becoming stronger. Because sometimes life does not teach us through the people who agree with us. Sometimes it teaches us through the person we almost refuse to listen to. Victoria lost $900 million that morning, but she gained something far more valuable: the humility to listen, the courage to admit she was wrong, and the wisdom to understand that no fortune is greater than the people who help us protect it. And Michael, he never needed revenge. He simply needed the chance to be heard.